Hey guys, we're at the Saltwater Edge today. This is Tyler, Jonathan. We're going to be talking about the lures that we use from March through December. He's mostly focusing on fishing from a kayak. I'm focusing on fishing from shore, surf, back bay, a little bit of fly. And these are the selections that we picked out.
Yeah, I can jump right into it. So start with March. We're sort of leaving holdover season alone just because not so many guys are out doing it. So we sort of tried to pick like 3-ish lures per month, maybe a couple honorable mentions because it's really hard to narrow it down to 3 for some of those months. So my few that I picked for March are let's see if I can dig them out here. Little 3-inch paddle tail, either Jig Pro or NLBN. I prefer the Jig Pro in the little 3-inch. It just has a sort of softer plastic and a better wag on the tail for the smaller size. And then the little 5¼ Zoom Flukes, either weightless or on a jig head. Really nice little subtle presentation. Any little straight tail that time of year when it's cold is going to get the job done and get those bites when they're feeling finicky. And then the Finesse fish, smaller sizes too, but come like the second half of March, you're sort of seeing some herring starting to show up. So that 7.5-inch can be pretty money, or 7-inch can be pretty money. The herring color here is perfect, but white or black also gets it done. So those are the few I had for March.
For March, I'm going to be throwing the 5-inch SP Minnow, especially when it's low light conditions or after dark. If it's sundown, I'll also be throwing the smallest mag darter. I've had some good luck on that when nothing else really seems to work. And if it's like bright out, middle of the day, and I just happen to be going, I'll be throwing some sort of small paddle tail similar to what he's doing. And also the smallest Rapala X-Wrap I seem to have good luck with as well.
Yeah. Going on to April. So by April, you're really thinking herring. So I've got the original Hoagie 7-inch. I also throw the 10-inch a lot come April. Weightless on a jig head, but especially weightless when those herring around. The Hoagie original is really tough to beat. And then sort of going on brand there, you've got the 7.5-inch Sluggo. Same deal, just a soft plastic presentation, weightless to make it move like a herring. Those get smoked all April long, and then same deal at night, especially the redfin swimmer. Just anything that'll throw a wake will get their attention and make them think it's a herring, especially those new moons in April. And March can be really good for throwing a sort of topwater-ish wake bait, just because they've got their eyes on those first herring that show up. And then honorable mention, just because I haven't thrown it, but I'm definitely going to this year, is the 7-inch K-tail. These things are sick and are a really cool herring impression. I didn't fish them all this year, but I'm definitely going to, and everybody else definitely should give them a shot.
That's definitely something I'm looking forward to trying, just because April, the herring run that I fish, is pretty shallow water, and that's just like a perfect soft plastic for that spot. Beginning of April, I'm still kind of throwing the same thing, but by mid-April, I'm looking for fresh fish, I'm looking for sea lice, and they're showing up ready to chew on herring. He had a redfin. I also tend to throw that time of year. And that's also a time when I start doing more daytime fishing. And one thing that works really good when they first show up is small topwaters. The jumping minnow, great plug. And if they're just not quite keyed in on topwater or just aren't as aggressive, these smaller sluggos, the 6-inch and 7.5-inch, just weightless on like an Albie snack hook or some sort of worm style hook, works really good when the fish are up shallow and are just being picky and finicky. And another thing that works very good for me at night is metal lips. This is a 401, but I've also got Gibbs here. And like he was saying, just something that throws a wake. But I'm really looking for something that can swim really shallow, because the fish are up shallow. You can sometimes see them waking and just sight cast them. But you need something that's going to get the right motion but not dig too deep and just dig up weeds on the bottom.
moving on to May. May, you're usually starting to think pogies. This year was sort of an exception, but in general, Narragansett Bay is blowing up with pogies come like May 15th, maybe, like second, third week of May. It's usually pretty good. And then by the end of the month, there's usually a ton of pogies around. So this year in particular, but really every year, these Nichols Magnum spoons are awesome. This year they were really, really good because those bass were coming in through the channels of the bay, and they were sitting down deep in 45 to 55-ish feet of water, sometimes deeper. So having something that can get down to them was really good. And just anything that looks like a pogie that time of year is going to crush. The dock too. May is when the dock comes into play. Everybody knows about the dock at this point, but if you're looking for a big bait, this is the one. We also have I don't have it in front of me right now, but the 247 Mullies in stock. That's a slightly smaller impersonation, and that'll do it too. But the dock is just, if you're looking to throw a topwater, just grab a dock. And then big metal lips. I haven't thrown this one yet, but I want to, in the bunker color. These things are awesome. These are a couple that I actually did throw this year. This is a Vinny's custom. So anything sort of looking like a pogie is going to do it. And then this is a big gremlin troller that comes more into play more in the summer when they're down in those deeper waters. And then big soft plastics, the big Hoagie Slappies, and GT eels, anything like that, the Joe Baggs Block Island eels. I prefer the Hoagies and the GT eels in general. They just seem to hold up and get bit and do everything you want them to do. So yeah, I'm pretty much starting in May. I'm throwing big soft plastics for the next couple of months.
For May, the first half of the month is pretty much status quo, with like the end of April. I'm still mostly fishing around herring runs, but as more and more fish filter in, they get a little more aggressive. They tend to hit more plugs, and one of the things that works really good for me is glide baits. This is a Larson, but you could also use the Yozuri Twitch baits or the Tsunami Tidal Twitch Pro, something like that. But that's another plug that I think we're really looking forward to throwing this spring, just because I've heard good things about it. I'm also going to be throwing lures in the surf come May. The first cast I actually made this season was with a pencil popper, and I landed like a 35-inch bass. Really caught me off guard. But pencil poppers is going to be what I'm really throwing in the surf in May. If you're coming across bluefish, it's really nice to have something with a single hook in the back, something cheap, replaceable, and that's about it for May.
Yeah. So moving on to June, you're usually thinking big stuff, big bait. Those bass are looking for a big meal, and usually Narragansett Bay is pretty loaded with big bass come June. So this is where it gets a little repetitive for me. Again, I'm throwing the big plastics, weightless on a jig head on those Titan diver hooks. Just depends on the scenario, really. But those are going to be night and day. Those are working. Same with the metal lip, night and day. Big metal lip. Just if you're kayak fishing, if you're new to it, it's super easy. You just throw it out behind you and slowly troll it around. And then on that theme, the Butchie built tubes sort of come in around June and then throughout the summer and fall. And same deal, you just throw them behind you, especially if you're new to fishing or new to kayak fishing. They'll catch fish if you're going fast, if you're going slow, if it's riding high, if it's riding deep. So the tube is sort of just one of those all-around good tools to have if you're kayak fishing. And then I have an honorable mention here for the NLBN 8-inch paddle tail, but really just any big soft plastic that's going to thump and get down deep where they might be sitting come that time of year.
For June, I'm going to be fishing boulder fields, and one of the things that I really like to throw is the Magic Swimmer. It's a great imitation for a pogie. You can just burn it up top and get the strikes from fish that are in between the boulders without hanging it up. I'll also fish sluggos around that, usually the 9-inch. I like fishing the tandem rigs, but if you want to go a little more weedless, you can just rig it on a worm style hook and another good swimmer that I like throwing is the Daiwa SP Minnow. I mean, a lot of people carry it and throw it, but that's just something that's always in my bag, and when things kind of slow down for me in the summer, that's something that can get bit when other things aren't getting bit.
July, usually sort of getting in the dog days, mostly going to be a nighttime bite if you're fishing big fish, maybe some schoolies still going on during the day, but hot water, and so you're dealing with fish down deep for the most part. I realize I left the dock out of my June selection, but the dock all summer long, especially if you're fishing out front along the reefs, that's good literally May through October. So always have the dock with you. But come July, I'm throwing the dock. I'm still throwing these big soft plastics. At this point, usually on jig heads in deeper water, fast current, places like that where the big bass are going to be wanting to hang out when that water is getting up to 70 and over. And then I've got the tube again. Once again, just a great all summer long bait. You just throw it behind you, and whether you're going fast or slow, it'll catch fish. And then I've got the big metal lips again. This is where the trollers really come into play for me. Same thing on a kayak. You just throw it behind you, and it digs and catches fish. That time of year, they're really looking for a big bait to eat. So you put that down in front of them, and that'll get it done.
For July, I'm basically doing the same thing that I did in June, but just maybe looking for a little bit deeper water. Might have to travel around, look for cooler water, maybe head north. But I'm pretty much doing the same thing that I did in June.
That's fair. August, we're sort of starting to think albies and bonito and stuff like that around here. We tried to keep this bass centered, but it's hard to when you're fishing around here. I know I can't keep my mind off the albies once they start to show up. So usually come about August 15th, that's what we're sort of starting to go out there looking for. So for August, I've got the Hoagie Epoxy Minnow. There's all sorts of epoxy minnows out there now, but Hoagie is probably the best as far as their selection of colors and sizes and all that. They just have a perfect variety. They have everything you'll need. But the other one, there's the Joe Bags and the Game Ons, and they all work. But I just went for the Hoagie. Albie snacks, always got to have a few packs of white Albie snacks on you. Different colors work, obviously, but the white is just a staple, and you got to have it with you at all times once you're rolling around that time of year. And then Hoagie Surface Eraser. Those windy days, you just want something that you can bomb into the wind, and the action isn't so important when there's waves. So you just need to have something for those windy days when you need to cast into the wind, and you can't be throwing a 5/8 epoxy and having it land 20 feet in front of you. So that's my August.
For August, I'm going to be doing pretty much the same thing, but fishing from jetties instead of from a kayak. Epoxies is pretty much the go-to, as well as the swimming plugs. This is a crystal minnow, the Ozuri, but the mag minnow is also a great option this year, as well as the Albie snacks are also a great go-to.
So September is sort of when we're right into the thick of it as far as Albie season and bonito. So sort of the same deal. Epoxy jigs, you want a good variety, depends on the day. Same deal with the Albie snacks, you usually want a few different colors, but the main one to have with you is white, and then maybe something bright like the pink or the chartreuse. And then got to have the mag minnow. This year the mag minnow was the ticket for the bonito. It was the year of the bonito here, and the mag minnow was probably the MVP lure. I bet if we took a poll here at the shop, the mag minnow would be the MVP. And then, yeah, sort of same deal. Surface eraser for those windy days. I really don't throw it unless it's windy, but it just cuts the wind so nice that you got to have one just in case.
In September, I'm thinking mullet and the surf for stripers. I want to be throwing something a little bit bigger, something to get their attention, and something that's a good imitation of them. During the daytime, I really like throwing pencil poppers, just something to cover ground and to get reactions from the fish. At night, I really like the mag darters. The larger size especially is a really good imitation for mullet, and I really like looking for current, where they're going to be staging and where the bass are going to be staging, looking for them. If I want to go a little bit shallower, this is the Hoagie OG swimmer. It's basically like a redfin, but it just casts better, has a little bit more rattling sound, so just draws in a little bit more strikes. And this time of year, there's also a lot of small bait starting to show up, and a fly teaser is a really good thing to start including this time of year.
So moving on to October, we're still thinking hardtails generally. They're usually still around at that point. But then the bass fishing usually picks back up and the tog fishing usually gets really good. So we didn't really include any terminal tackle as you've seen in this video, but tog jigs are definitely good to have come October. And then fish bites. These don't really count for this video, but we threw it in here. These are awesome and will definitely get you some bites, especially on those days if you're not carrying crabs, but you decide you want to drop down for some tog or sea bass or really anything like that. The fish bites work really well. It's clean. It doesn't stink like gulp. So you want to have some of those with you. But then sort of getting back on track, the mag minnows still, especially for those bonito, usually we get some big bonito rolling around in October. You have your better chance at those 8, 9, 10 pound bonito. So a swimming plug is good for those. But then pretty much same deal. Epoxies, surface eraser, albie snacks, that sort of stuff for the hardtails. And then I threw in the jumping minnow for bass. Because usually I'm starting to hit the marshes and backwaters again for bass, sort of like where you start the year. And you can get some pretty good fish in skinny water in October on little spooks and stuff like that. And little soft plastics, bring the Zoom Flukes and stuff like that back out, because those will start to catch fish again.
For October, I usually try to spend some time out at block. And the name of the game out there is throwing needlefish, whether it's custom wood or just the classic super strike. If it's darker nights, which it's really dark out there, blurple is almost all they'll hit. And I've also been out there when it's super bright for the full moon and just real bright parrot. That's the thing to throw. During the daytime out there, there's not really much of a striper bite, so I usually try to do a little bit of hardtail fishing. This last season, the only thing that was in there was mackerel, but it was something to catch. And the best thing to throw for them was an epoxy. And if there's bonito around, it's same thing, just throwing the same plugs. Daytime, I'll be throwing a pencil popper or a metal, just something small that looks like a sand eel and can cover a lot of water.
November is pretty similar, and I sort of have November and December grouped together because I don't fish December particularly hard, but John probably has more to say about December. But November and sort of throwing December in there, sort of the same deal as far as the backwaters. The first half of November or so, you can still catch fish on spooks in skinny water. That really seems to slow down the second half of November. Those fish start to get a little more sparse and a little less willing to eat. So I've got those. You're thinking tog in November. It's pretty much prime time here in Rhode Island for tog. Fish bites, if you're not using bait, or even if you are using bait, it's a good supplement to your crabs. Just helps you get an extra bite once they pick your hooks clean. So I've got those, and then you're sort of reverting back to the stuff you started the year with as far as the small little soft plastics. Your Zoom Flukes and your little paddle tails are going to get it done when those fish get a little more picky and finicky in the skinny water.
In November in Rhode Island, you can get some pretty explosive feeds the first half. So you want to have something that can get out into the feeds but is also small enough that they're still going to hit it. If they're in range, like right up against the rocks, a bucktail is a great option. But if they're a little bit further out, you can use a casting egg with a lighter bucktail. I caught a lot of fish on this last November. You just want to be able to get that small profile out, and you want to be able to work it slow just so the fish can see it. If they're a little bit further out, I revert back to the metal. Just, again, it's a small profile, but you can get it really far out. And if they are thrashing on the top, I really like throwing top water. And the Yozuri inshore top knock pencil in the bunker color has just been exceptional for me the last few seasons. They just really key in on it. And then come the second half of the month, it's kind of reverting back to what you're throwing at the beginning of the season, just small paddle tails, jigging it along the bottom.
So you might have noticed sort of a theme here. We sort of start with the small, subtle plastic presentations in the spring when the water's cold and those fish are still kind of lockjaw sometimes. And then as the big bait and the big fish start to show up, we start throwing those bigger baits to get those big bites. And then when the season winds down again in the fall, we're sort of reverting back to where we started with the small presentations to get those picky fish in the cold water to bite. A lot of times that's back into the skinny water where you sort of started the season in the spring. So it's always cool to see how the season sort of goes full circle like that.
At the beginning of the season, it's also a good time to fly fish, and same thing with the fall. When you have smaller bait around, that's kind of the time to do it. And your presentations also are sort of reflected in what you throw. In the summertime, when you're throwing bigger plugs, you're gonna be fishing pretty heavy gear, surf rod, big Van stall if you're swimming. And in the shoulder seasons, like in the spring and the fall, you kind of scale down your tackle as the lures get scaled down as well. If I'm fishing backwater, it's like a 7.5 foot rod, and it's just the way the season goes.
Yeah, so be sure to like and subscribe if you're not already. If you have any comments, we'd love to hear them. If you feel strongly about your top 3 favorite lures for a particular month, we'd love to know. Thanks.